Assuming it's possible, what would humanity be like once every worthwhile thing we could possibly know has already been said? So before I read you the two interactions that I had with this, once I posted this on social media, some of these things I kind of just get these thoughts out and I post them out, and I like what people say. And also, let me know what you think in the comment section. Before I tell you more about it, write me a comment. I normally say, it's better to listen to the entire video before you write it, but this is a question. I would just like to know from you that, assuming it is possible, what would humanity be like once every worthwhile thing we could possibly know has already been said? And I have this question, and there's a separate question I'm going to have to asking about this, and there's probably several questions I can ask about this thing. As a creative person, I write, I draw, I do different things. You see the merchandise that I post on my videos, you see the speed drawings that are going on. As I read these things and read these videos, like I think right now I'll be going with Anuma Salis as a character. There's this character that I invented for this life, this existence, that this universe, Caliber universe that I had, where I put this character and different characters from this universe in different forms of entertainment, kind of like crossovers that they do in comic books and other things. Like, oh, they cross over to this other universe, so I put my characters in other universes, or bring characters from other creative universes into this universe. And there's a whole backstory to this, and I'll be talking about more on that on some other occasion. But with this, where sometimes when I create things, I think, do I have the ability to truly come up with a unique thought? Some of these things in my videos might seem repetitive, but it's just saying things in different ways. How often have you come up with a thought and then somebody later on tells you, like, oh yeah, this great writer, this great thinker, this philosopher, this politician, someone else said this thing that you thought that you just came up with? Now that isn't necessarily plagiarism, but there are things out there. Like, one of the recent ones I had was, this paraphrasing is, the thing about reality is it does not require you to defend it. It just is, whether you know it or not. So I don't have to know what the temperature is outside right now. I'm looking out of the window. I don't know the accurate temperature in whichever way I want to define it. Even if I define those numbers in different ways and we have an argument of what the actual number means, are we using Celsius or Fahrenheit? However, we have to define what the actual thing is, the actual state of heat versus cold, or we want to talk about, is whatever temperature we do find it is. Some people might consider that very cold. Some people might consider that okay or lukewarm. Some people might be like, oh, that's actually kind of hot, depending on what they want. Those things are subjective. But the actual thing we are describing of the temperature is the actual temperature, whether no one actually measures it and gives it some kind of valuation. That is what it is. So that is the reality thing. And then somebody told me that there was like some great philosopher who had said something similar a few decades back. And it's like, oh, okay. And part of that, I understand, is because we are observing, we are both human beings, we both have generally similar biologies, similar faculties, similar senses, and we are observing the same input that is what it is, regardless of how we are able to define it. So if we're getting as close to the truth of what the thing is, a ball is a ball, whether we think balls are squares, it still doesn't change it from being a global type of circular type of thing that has that weight. And so if eventually somebody looks at it from afar, somebody looks at it from every different angle and things like that, then we eventually go and actually touch the ball. Chances are we'll come to that same understanding that it is a ball. So for some people, it's going to take them 20 years before they see a ball. For some people, they've been seeing a ball for every day of their life until they're one. So that 1-year-old might come to the understanding of what that ball is before that 20-year-old, because they've experienced that thing in a different way. But it's still the ball. So coming back to that thing. Now, when that person says, I have discovered this ball, I found the United States, I found the new world, we discovered a new country. That country was already there, whether they discovered it or not. There was some people living there or not. But was that part of what we define as the world? I don't necessarily think of. It was, because the people who thought of the world concept that we still use today were based in Europe. So the people in the Americas adopted that. So they became a new part of that concept of the world, of how we define the world. I don't think the people in the New World, in the Americas, actually had a knowledge or definition of Europe. Now, maybe they came in, and some people, there's some states where some people thought it was like gods and things like this, but they didn't have a knowledge that there could be something out there. I don't think they were searching and looking for this other land out there that could possibly be this other place to add to this already one planet land that they had in mind. So there's those kind of questions and things. But regardless, coming back to this thing, What is your answer? Assuming it's possible, what would humanity be like once every worthwhile thing we could possibly know has already been said? Because I wonder right now, when I write stories, when I work on this carbon story, can I tell a new story? When I see certain information that I think is important for people to learn, do I think, is there a reason for me to come in and translate it and say it in my own way? Or should I just read and repeat what somebody else said because they've already said it? Can I really come up and know something new? And my answer, and I'm being very specific on this, getting into the semantics, I'm going to read you the actual conversations I had with you because I go into some of the reasons why I believe this, is I think we are very, very far from it. I don't know what the world is going to look like, what existence, what humanity will be like once that time comes. But I think from what I know about humanity and what we seem to know about existence, we might know certain foundations about things that humans can know. But I think from what we know right now, from the limited amount that I know, that I think I know about what humanity knows, I think we're not even at 1% of the things we could possibly know and still be humans. And that is very key, me saying still be humans. So let me just read the comments that I had with the friends here. So the first comment was, I was going to put MT. MT is going to be the name of the person who commented this. It said, quite hopefully. And my response was, can you expand on that? And they said, it's all been said. And to that I responded, for me to claim I know this would require me to believe I also know that everything that there is to know. Do you claim to know this? Or do you think you can confidently say it's all been said without accepting the premise I presented? And just a few more details here. The premise I presented talking about the everything is specifically, I don't think I can know that we've known everything unless I'm aware of what everything actually is, if that makes any sense. Everything as a subject, as a thing itself. Okay, so MT responded, I know that I know nothing, but if it's only been said, then we still know nothing and everything can't be known. So we're back to where we started. I was really just making a joke up there. And my response to that was, okay, I'm getting into semantics here. As I mentioned to you guys, semantics is something I like engaging in. Okay, so I'm getting into semantics here. I think it may be impossible to actually conceptualize nothing. Once you do, it's something. I also think, by definition, it will be possible for humans to know everything humans can possibly know. Which isn't to say that we would know everything that is. For everything that is, I doubt we could really even be considered human anymore. Then at that point, whatever we have become may be able to actually conceptualize nothing. And then MT responded, interesting, I want to think about this a little. And I hope they do think about this a little, might hit them up and see if they thought about it before. They know me respond to some of the things that I post, so hopefully they listen to this video. MT, you know who you are. And if you remember having this conversation, let me know if you thought about it some more and you're actually getting into more information about this. And then in a separate comment on that thread, I wrote, it's possible that this could happen without one human, if any, actually being aware of that it's happened. That was another clarification where part of why I think it's possible to happen is you don't have to be aware of it. You could be sitting there. There could be somebody who wakes up tomorrow and for some way or form gets to that last bit of knowledge that is worthwhile knowledge. I could be completely wrong that it's 1%. We could actually be at 99.99999%, and everything we're talking about is just derivations and changing and translations of all the information. We might know the basics to life already. My whole thing is like, what is the question of life? Like, no, people say, what's the question of life? What's the main question? What's the answer? 42 from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy with Deep Thought? No, my always is like, what, comma, is the question of life? To me, something is alive when it has the ability to ask what, whether there's actually free will in there in the libertarian sense, but just the concept of thinking you have an option between doing one thing or the other, and you somehow have a choice or have some kind of deciding process as an organism, as a life form, to do that one thing. Whereas I think things that we don't consider alive, like a rock, just falls. But a rock could just fall, and it will just fall to the ground because of gravity. You drop it out of a helicopter, for example, it falls. A human being falls out of the ground just by gravity. They're still limited by falling, by the gravity, But they can choose to windmill their arms. They could choose to turn around. They could choose to scream. They could choose to think about some other things before they slam onto the ground. But still, they have some kind of what? Like, what is going on right here? Why am I falling? What did I do to end up falling out of this helicopter? The rock doesn't have that thought. So that is part of it. And I also think like art is a language of life. So there are things relating to that and to why I have questions like this and why I enjoy making videos like this and having conversations like this. So that was my clarification. It is possible I'm completely wrong. It's possible that somebody who's going to be born tomorrow or just wake up tomorrow and get that last bit of knowledge that we can possibly know, where to us to know something that is actually intrinsically different or added that is right now completely unknown about existence that's possible, that's open to humans, is done with this person. That is possible. So we don't have to know that we know. Okay, so my other friend, PB, again, if you listen to this and you check it out, let me know what you think. So they wrote, how do you know it hasn't already happened? And we posted this, that person posted that, I think it was a little bit after mine. I don't think he read my comment saying, we might not know. So this is kind of a thing that I posted before this person posted this, but they posted that. So I said, see comment above yours. Musing about that got me to post this status. Had thought art-wise that it is unlikely I create something that is actually new. Like I've posted a status asking how one would go about drawing something that no human has ever seen. Creatures tend to just be a combination of various things that we've already seen. As for what it is that we can know, maybe foundationally it's already been done. It's already there and done. And all we're really doing is saying the same things in more complex and or convoluted ways. If so, there will be a difference as conscious awareness of this state of being hits different milestones on its way to being something known by all humans able to know anything. And then their response to that was, doesn't matter until there is collective consciousness able to recognize, otherwise it will continue to in perpetuity as each individual reaches this conclusion. Okay, and then my response to them was, collective consciousness how? Some sort of telepathic hive mind, or just in general most individuals that make up collectives in the West now accept as known things that it is being like bad or counterproductive to attempt to own fellow human beings, whereas 1,000 years ago most individuals did not consciously know this. And then the response from PB was linked consciousness. Universal synthetic consciousness, aka USC, aka the Trojans. If you're American, you get that USC is University of South Carolina, and there the sports team is called the Trojans. And my response to that was many practical ways to do that have been theorized already. And now when we get into the universal synthetic consciousness, we're talking about artificial intelligence and things like this. There's many ways. I think they're going to talk about this in separate occasions, but you can just look into different AI things to see, just do an internet search to see a search engine search for universal synthetic consciousness if you want to learn more about those things. And if you've read hard sci-fi, there's different ways where in the near future, not even the near future, some of the older sci-fi, these have been concepts that have been discussed way further in the past. Now, even when you go back to like Bible stuff and like that, because I just think religions, most dogma is just really old, not as good science fiction. Like it was when all these things, politics, culture, sociology, way to run relationships, systems of law were just all tied into a way of trying to understand and do better as life forms. It was from what they knew at that time about everything that was available to them. Just like when you see the Bible, it happens to be discussing only things that were existent in that Middle Eastern area around the Bronze Age. They didn't know about the New World. They didn't know about Eskimos and things like that. They didn't know about polar bears and other creatures from other places because that's just stuff they didn't know about. They didn't have access to that information, but they tried to do the best they could do with everything they knew. So even that stuff has things of this universal synthetic consciousness, gods, being omniscient, knowing all there is to know. That's knowing everything because they created everything, so they know everything from the start. But then now you look into like artificial intelligence, in some of the older sci-fi books from some of the great writers, they talk about what should actually be going on right now in this 2020s, the kind of advancements that we have. We don't have that yet. So a lot of people right now very worried about artificial intelligence becoming conscious, getting into a Skynet type of situation and taking over the world. There's a lot of the dystopic type of things. They take our jobs. Robots are going to take the jobs. They're going to take this over. I actually do think, in part to this whole thing of me saying, everything humans can know. I'm talking about humans with our flesh and blood bodies. I am supportive of transhumanism, and I think it's coming. There is a very good possibility that the same way single-cell organisms on the planet Earth that lived in just water and these ponds came together and created more complex life forms, where these complex life forms that exist around us, not just humans, but just earthlings in general, are a lot more complex than where they actually, the progenitors of earthlings, where they're not even this technically the same life forms anymore. Where you say, is this still a prokaryote? Prokaryotes were before us, but are we still them? No, it's a different life form. So there is going to be a time when I think humans are going to create sort of life forms of existence that are a lot more complex than humans, that can know more than humans do. Already right now, we have access to computers and pretty much all the information that any human has actually written down and been put into a computer. We can technically find that by accessing the internet, but we do not have the ability to have a human yet that can actually get all that information and data and hold it in their mind and recall it. Even the people with photographic memory, they don't have the ability to do that. Some people can fly over New York City and look at the city for a few hours as they fly over, go down and draw that, to details of drawing it. There's like 1 or 2 people in the world, but those people can't do other things that other people can do. Now, is it possible to get to a point where every single human being has the ability that these people who are normally autistic and on the spectrum have, and still be able to be capable to do all the myriad of things? I think it is possible to get to a point where we do have photographic memory, but there's still actual physical limits to our actual brain. We have the ability to think and create in different ways that machines who have access to more information can't do. Sometimes you have access to a certain amount of information, can be information paralysis, where you know so much about something you can't actually come to a decision, whereas somebody who just walks in and sees that issue is like, oh no, you should do this, you should do that, because they don't have the bias and preconceived notions from all the information they have. So there's different kind of ways and limitations and things like this. But what I was trying to get at was, I do think humans are going to create certain forms of existence that can know more than any human being can. And when you're creating these kind of transhuman things where now somebody is 95%, it pretty much, when you talk a Ghost in the Shell type of thing, where there's this could be a spoiler material for the Ghost in the Shell people. You could pause or you could just change. But there's a situation where it goes to the point where Alita in the distant future in that universe, in the Martian Chronicles, it's before the Martian Chronicles. I think it's before the Martian Chronicles. Right now it's like Battle Angel, then it goes to like a certain series where she's more of like a fighter, she's going different things. And then right now it's in the Martian Chronicles, so they go back into their past and see how Gali came to be who she became, Battle Angel Alita. Okay, so anyway, there was a thing where it's like, okay, people are completely machines. Most of the people, many people, are just brains inside machines. Their entire body is just a machine. But then they have this other thing where you can get to a point where they find technology that's actually advanced enough and capable of mapping human brain activity and just matching that, memories and everything in there. And that is something that is common. There's different sci-fi, it's a common thing in certain deep sci-fi things where immortality is pretty much it. Where we already find ways to clone different parts of people's bodies or animals and things like that. So you could technically clone your body to a biological level and clone that thing and get to a point where you can even arrest aging, because you'll find ways to just put more stem cells into your body to freeze your age at a certain time. So it's this constant actual reproduction of your body, of your physical biological self at its best physical sense. But then what do you do about the electrical activity that makes up your memories and your personality and things like that? There's going to be ways to map that, where in some universes, I think the Piers Anthony universes, he has this thing where you can actually get a backup of your brain activity. So if you go out and you're doing submission and you die and you have some insurance program, they can reboot you in the same physical body that you had the last time you were mapped, or at whatever appropriate time that you decide to actually have yourself mapped, and put the last memory save back into your mind. And if your brain is working on those same exact synapses and things like that, for all intents and purposes, it is you. There's some way that was, okay, we could have separate bodies where you have some ways of figuring out boosting the communication between the different bodies that are connected. Some are female, some are old, some are different races, some have mechanical cyborg pieces, some of them are just 100% biological, but they somehow work on this net where you're sending your actual thoughts together and you're like one mind, but it's like one person. So there's all these different things. Those are possibilities. But when you get to that kind of level of being able to know so much more, having more memory ability, are you still human? You look at your average human today, the average things your human knows, and the average behavior systems of your average human, and then you go back 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, 1,000 years, and you look at your average human then, and those people are almost subhuman. You're like, how do you not know this information? How do you think that's the thing to do? So where does it get to the point where you say, okay, now you're more human than human, more human? That song, I forget who sang that song, but things like that. So I do think there is going to be a point where humans create a new kind of life form that can know and is more capable than humans. The way we're probably going to populate other worlds and things like that, get extrasolar, is create certain machine type things that keep genes or keep the building blocks of biological life, and we send them out that can actually deal and survive in space with those long times and the high G forces that you would need to actually fly to anywhere that's decent enough to do it. Then it lands there, and then those robots might seed the Earth and seed whatever planet that is, and then start developing biological actual systems at that point. You might have enough raw materials on that land to just go there and build some kind of 3D human printing machines or biological matter printing machines and accelerate the whole system of terraforming those places. So those are the kind of things that I think would happen. But at that point, are those really humans? That's the question I'm asking you. So let me know what you think about this question. I appreciate you taking time to listen to this. Like, share, subscribe. If you appreciate the content I make here, I'm going to try to go more towards the direction of things. I've been doing some political stuff, and it's in political time when I'm recording this. But this is stuff I'm more interested in. And part of the reason I'm interested in the politics is because I think the politics has an effect. Doing some of the things in the politics could result in retarding our efforts to do some of these things that are more important for the entire human species, for actual knowledge and information. And I think many of the issues that happen in politics that have a direct day-to-day effect on our lives not only prevent us from doing these things that I consider more positive, but are in large part from a lack of information. Problems occur not because of what X is, but because of how we define X. So if we understand that, do we really know this information that's making us vote or dislike these other people, object to these things, or demand these things from these people? Do we actually know these people have our best interests in mind when they're doing these things and the other things? And I think if we have a better understanding of what knowledge is and what we know and what we don't know, what we can know and what we can't know, I think it will make for a better world. So that's it for now. Till next time, goodbye.